I'm Alexander Elassal with Omega Core Technologies. At Omega Core, we work with organizations that want their technology to actually work for them, not create more work. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt confident that your team was actually consistently using the systems you invested in the way they were designed to be used? If you thought about it and you don't really like the answer, you're not alone. We often see as organizations grow, they invest in tools that really should make things easier, but somewhere between rollout and daily use, the value gets lost along the way. So today, I want to talk to you about why it happens, the patterns that we find showing up, and most importantly, where leaders can and should focus if they want to turn things around. So, question one, a lot of organizations invest heavily in new systems. So, why do so many still struggle to see value from them? So, most systems don't fail because they're bad. They fail because they're not used consistently. Buying the system is the easiest part. Getting people to actually use them is usually where things break down. So what we quite often see is organizations investing in the tools that should improve efficiency, but instead they create more work, more confusion, or flat out really just get ignored. Systems don't create value, consistent usage does. Adoption isn't something that just happens automatically. Without structure around the system, even good platforms will fail to deliver the value they were meant to create. Question two, what does that look like in practice when adoption isn't working? It's really a gap between how the system is supposed to be used and how work is actually getting done. Nothing feels completely broken, and that's typically why things are being missed. On paper, the process is clear. In reality, people are finding own ways to get things done. So you'll see work happening outside of the system, duplicate processes or teams falling back to their old ways that they were comfortable or familiar with. People don't resist the systems, they just work around them. Over time, the system becomes something that exists, but isn't actually driving how work is happening. If the system isn't part of the workflow, it becomes optional. And when it's optional, the value will never show up. Question three. So is the issue usually the system itself or something else? We find that it's rarely the system itself. Yes, there are times where it makes sense to change out a system, but a lot of the platforms these days are more than capable of, producing the results that you're really looking for. The issue isn't that the systems are the problem. The issue is that behaviors aren't changing. If the system doesn't align with how people actually work, they won't adapt to it. They work around it. And once those workarounds become habits or the lack of changing habits, adoption has become very difficult to recover from. And adoption isn't rollout, it's a behavior shift. It's alignment between the system, the process, and how people actually work. Question four, what patterns do you tend to see when adoption starts to fail? There are a few things that come up consistently. One is that when the system is introduced, but not fully embedded into the day-to-day, people know it exists. They start to treat it as optional. And then another big one is ownership. Who owns or is responsible for the implementation, not even the implementation, but the consistent usage after implementation. I mean, if you think about the last tool that was implemented, the IT doing the training, if it was, then once they left the picture, if you will, who in management or leadership continued to ensure that system was fully utilized to its capacity. That's one of the bigger gaps that we tend to see. Then there's just the overall ease of use, right? Like, so the old way may have been more cumbersome. A lot of times we find that is the case, but it's familiar, right? If the system isn't the easiest way to work in that individual's mind or that team's mind, it's not going to be used. And what's important is none of it's intentional, right? I mean, people are trying to stay productive, but without alignment, productivity and adoption start to move in opposite directions. So where should leaders start if they want to improve adoption? Well, the starting point, visibility. I mean, you need to understand where the system is actually being bypassed. Why isn't it working? I would ask questions to the team. You can't, you can't fix adoption without understanding where it's failing. Where are people avoiding the system? Where are they duplicating effort? Where are they reverting to old habits and so on? Those points of friction are telling you exactly where the problem is. From there, you can focus on simplifying the process or aligning or making sure the system supports the way your staff, your team are actually working versus how you think they're working. I'll say this: adoption improves when the systems become the easiest way to get the job done. You would think it's common practice, but I think that's a really important point. So if your system isn't being used consistently, there's a good chance you're not getting value for what you've paid for. And most of that loss isn't obvious day to day. It shows up as duplicated effort, workarounds, and inefficiency. What looks like usage often isn't real adoption. That's exactly why we created the software adoption reality check. It helps you identify where adoption is breaking down, where effort is being duplicated, and where your systems aren't aligned, and how your team actually works. It only takes a few minutes to go through, but it can give you a clear view of where a value is being lost and what to prioritize next. So hopefully that'll give you a practical starting point. And you don't need to overhaul everything. You just need to know where the gaps really are and start there. If you're ready to understand exactly where the adoption is breaking down, the software adoption reality check is the great next step. Thanks for your time.